everybody, and welcome to our distance learning series. This is Miss Courtney with grade 4. Nice to see you again this morning. Today we have a special webinar. This is webinar number 5, but as you can see, it's not our typical grammar and English in context webinar. This webinar is going to combine grammar and vocabulary that we've learned for the past 2 weeks. And we're going to try to see it in a real context, in this case, a reading text. So as you know, that we've been learning about family for the past 2 weeks, and also we've put a lot of emphasis on past tenses. So today we're going to try to combine the two, a text about family and also one that demonstrates and shows the use of past simple tense. Let's go. Okay. As always, you should open up your notebook, take out a pen, and please write down today's date. What is today's date? Please write it down now. Okay. Today is Friday, the 10th of April, 2020. Now, please look at these pictures, okay? Some of these words may be new to you. Some of them may not be. Let's listen and point together. I will say the word. You take your finger and you point, you listen, and you repeat. Here we go. Arrive. Ask. Check. Enter. Pour. Crowded. Clerk. Visit. Sick. Okay. Please write these words in your notebook now. You will need to know these words in order to help you understand the text that we read later. Please stop the video now. Please write these words in your notebook. Okay. Now you've written down the words. I'm going to tell you what these words mean. I'm going to give you the Russian translation, okay? So that there's no misunderstanding, so that you definitely understand what the words mean. Word number 1, arrive. Значит приехать. Number 2, ask. Спрашивать. Number 3, check. Проверить. Number 4, enter. Войти. Number 5, poor, бедный. Number 6, crowded, многолюдный. Number 7, clerk, служащий, или clerk, просто. Number 8, visit, посещать или посещение. It can be a verb or a noun. And our last word, sick, больной. Please take a moment and write down the translation for these words now in your notebook. When you have finished, we can continue on to the next slide. Please pause now, write the words in the translations, and then we will continue. Okay, now let's see what you remember. Okay. So we have our words here on the screen: arrive, ask, check, enter, pour, crowded, clerk, visit, and sick. Now, we have an exercise here. Complete the sentences. Circle the 2 correct words that can fill in the blank. For each number, there are 2 correct answers. Please look at the screen now. So for number 1, we see the checks something, the doctor checks something, or the clerk checks something. These are both correct, these 2 answers. For number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, please do these exercises now in your notebook. Write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and write A and B, and the 2 answers that can be for each blank. Pause the video and do this now, then we will continue. Okay, So now let's check our answers. Number 2, he wants to A, visit, and C, go to the zoo. Number 3, she's sad because she is B, sick, or C, poor. Number 4, the ship is very C, big, or B, crowded. Number 5, I like to ask questions. I like to answer questions. Number 6, he arrives at school and enters his classroom, sees his classroom. How did you do? Check your answers now, and let's continue. Okay, our next task is to learn about sequence. Sequence is about order, putting things in order, first, second, third, fourth, fifth. What happened first? What happened second? What happened next? Okay? So, before we read this story, we're going to think about order. Please read this here. I will read it for you. Before you read, learn. Sequence of events. Sequence is the order of things, such as 1, 2, 3, 4, or A, B, C, D. Stories often have a sequence. Events in a story happen in an order. Here's an example. Look at the picture. There's a picture of Grace, and she's mailing a letter. Number 1, Grace mailed a letter from Paris to her cousin in London. The letter arrived in 10 days. Her cousin was happy to get the letter. Okay? So as you can see, something happened first, second, and third. Okay? Now it's your turn. Look at this exercise here. Put the events in the correct order. Write the numbers. Please pause the video and continue now. Please just write sequence activity and write the numbers that you see in order. Okay, here we go. Number 1, Lucia lived in a village long ago. Number 2, she visited her aunt in the city. Number 3, she arrived in 2 days. Number 4, she and her aunt visited many fun places. And number 5, Lucia was sad to say goodbye. As you can see, we can put the events in a story in order. You're going to have to do this when we read our text. At the end of that text, you will have to put the events of the story in order. Be ready. Now, let's think a little bit before we start our reading. Our reading is possibly going to be about family and about traveling, maybe about moving. All right, so I'm going to give you a hint. A boy traveled with his family to the United States many years ago from a faraway place. Okay? How do you think they traveled? All right, something to think about. Nowadays, we have so many different forms of transport. We have airplanes, helicopters, trains, cars, buses, everything. Subway, all right? But back then, in the past, people didn't have so many different forms of transport that we have today. So, I want you to think about how they traveled. Look at the pictures now on your slide. Okay, remember, this time was a long time ago, many years ago in the past. Okay, so think, how do you think people in the past traveled? Please create a sentence in your notebook now. Write down a sentence, please, about how you think they traveled. Here's an example. In 2010, I traveled to Russia by plane. Please take note of the word by in red on the slide. It's an important word, okay? Please write your answer in your notebook. I think they traveled by Because la 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 la. Please explain to me why. Okay, let's continue. All right, now it's time to read, but first let's make some predictions about the reading. Please look at the picture. What do you think the story is about? Take a moment to think. Also think about who is in the picture. Please think about these questions and write the answers in your notebook. Pause the video and write your answers to these questions. Okay, now let's read and check your predictions. Let's see if you're correct. Okay, so please read along with me. Look at the pictures, okay? I will read the story. Please read along and listen. Here we go. Tell me a story, Grandpa. Okay, says Grandpa. I'll tell you a story about my grandfather, Carlo. In 1910, Carlo was 10 years old. He and his family lived in Italy. They were very poor, so they came to the United States for a better life. This was the first time that Carlo traveled to a place far away. Really? I'm 10 too, says Henry. And Mom, Dad, and I visit a different country every summer. Yes, Henry, things are different now, says Grandpa. How did they travel here, asks Henry. They traveled by ship, says Grandpa. It wasn't an easy trip because the ship was crowded and dirty. There wasn't much food and many people got sick. Carlo was sick too. They arrived at Ellis Island in New York after 10 days. Wow, that's slow, says Henry. Now it only takes about 9 hours in an airplane. I know, says Grandpa. It's very different today. Okay, continue reading on the next slide with me. What happened at Ellis Island, asks Henry. Doctors checked everyone, and Carlo was very scared, says Grandpa. Why was he scared, Grandpa? Doctors help people, says Henry. Yes, but people who weren't healthy couldn't enter New York, says Grandpa. The clerks asked them many questions. What questions, Grandpa? Asks Henry. Where are you from? Are you healthy or are you sick, says Grandpa. Luckily, Carlo was feeling better, so they let him in. And that's why we live here today and not in Italy. That was a cool story, Grandpa, says Henry. I have an idea. Let's take a trip to Italy. That's a good idea, Henry, says Grandpa. Let's go next summer. Awesome, Grandpa, but let's take an airplane, not a ship. Okay, that's the end of the story. Okay, now, after reading our story about Henry and his grandpa and his great-grandfather, Carlo, let's think about the story and let's think about what we thought about it. Okay, so now, please, in your notebook, answer the following questions. What was your favorite part of the story? Write sentences in your notebook telling me about your favorite part. Write at least one sentence that tells me why. You need to explain your answer, okay? And you don't have to only write one sentence that tells me why. You can write more if you want. You can write as much as you want, okay? There's never a limit. Here's an example. My favorite part of the story was, because, You can give more details. You can write more than one sentence. Please stop the webinar and answer this question now in your notebook. Okay, let's continue. Now, as I promised, I told you that there would be a sequence activity. So now we need to think back and remember how the story took place. What happened first? What happened second, third, fourth? Okay, so now, please look at this activity on the slide. Look at the different variants. Carlo and his family traveled to the United States on a ship. Carlo and his family arrived at Ellis Island. Carlo and his family entered New York. Carlo and his family live in the United States. The clerks asked Carlo questions. And the first one is given to you. Carlo and his family lived in Italy. Stop the webinar. And in your notebook, please write sequence activity. And please write B. Then, in the correct order, write numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Please pause the webinar, do this now, and then we will continue. Okay, now let's check our answers. Number 1, Carlo and his family lived in Italy. Number 2, Carlo and his family traveled to the United States on a ship. Number 3, Carlo and his family arrived at Ellis Island. Number 4, the clerks asked Carlo questions. Number 5, Carlo and his family entered New York. And number 6, Carlo and his family live in the United States. Check your answers now. How did you do? Okay, check your answers. Now, it's time for reading comprehension. All right? Please look at this small activity on this slide with 4 questions. Go back to the story and find the words that go in the blanks, okay? Please stop the webinar, okay? You're gonna have to go back to the text or do it from memory, and you're gonna have to look and see which words go in which sentence, okay? Pause the webinar, write these 4 sentences in your notebook under Comprehension Check 1, 2, 3, 4. Stop the webinar, go back, find the answers to each of these activities, then we will check together. Please pause the webinar now. Okay, let's check our answers. Henry and his family visit a different country every summer. Carlo is Grandpa's grandfather. Carlo's family wanted a better life because they were very poor. The ships from Italy were dirty and crowded. Okay? How did you do? Did you get them all right? All right. Let's continue. Now, after reading a story, we should reflect on what we've read. We should think about it. Okay? So right now, I need you in your notebooks to think first and then write. Here we go. If you answer these questions in your notebook and show them to me later, I will give you an extra 2 points on Class Dojo. Question number 1. Do you think Henry is happy he lives now and not in the past? Why? Please answer this question in a full sentence. Number 2. Do you think it was easy traveling to a new country a long time ago? Please write your answer in your notebook. Number 3. Did your family travel to Russia from another country in the past? In America, we have everybody came, virtually, unless you're an American Indian, a Native American, everybody has family who came from another place. I know that Russia's a little bit different. Not everyone here has family who have come from a different place. But if you do have this family history, please write a few sentences about your family, okay? Also, maybe you have family that didn't come from a different country, but maybe came to Moscow from a different part of Russia, okay? So please answer this question number 3 for you. Did your family travel to Russia from another country in the past? Or did your family travel to Moscow from a different part of Russia in the past? Write me about it. You can write as much as you want, okay? But please, at least 2 or 3 sentences, okay? But if you want to write more and you want to write me a story about your family, that's great too. Now, I have some super bonus questions for those of you who are super advanced in my group, okay? These questions demand higher grammar structures with present perfect or past perfect, okay? So you need to think about conditionals and things in the past. So this is for, you know who you are in my group, okay? If you answer these bonus questions, you get an extra dojo point as well, on top of the 2 for the regular task. If you were Carlo and his family, would you have come to America from Italy? Why or why not? Please answer this question in your notebook. Number 2. Do you think it is easier to move and live in another country now? Or was it easier in the past? Please explain. Okay? Everybody pause the webinar. Please answer these questions in your notebook in full, complete sentences. Not yes, not no, not I don't know. Please write full, complete sentences in your notebook. Pause the webinar and please do this activity now. Then we will continue. Okay, everybody, great job today. Today's webinar was a little bit longer than usual. I hope it didn't tire you out too much. Today, I hope that you will have been able to do these different things. I hope that you have learned new words, learned about putting a story in order using sequence, that you learned how to make predictions. You successfully read a story in English. You completed exercises about a story. You were able to understand and analyze a story. And you were able to write your personal opinion, what you thought. Okay? Could you do all of these things? Please check off all of the ones that you could do and put an X next to the ones that you might still have trouble with. Okay? Great work today, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. All right? I will see you guys next week. Over the weekend, please try to get as much done as possible. I know that this webinar has a few tasks that might take a little bit of time. Plus, you have a worksheet to do for today's lesson. Okay, please don't forget to complete the worksheet on Dnevnik.ru. It is located there, but it's also on our website. Okay, it's a few pages and it's connected with the story we read today. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you very much and have a great day.